Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're going to do a standalone today. And today's book is called Be My Babygirl, and it's by Jane Henry and it's either Shanna or Shanna Handel. We meet Katie Davis. She's a published author, and she's trying to come up with a new series. So her debut series was a huge hit, but now that her publisher has said, cowboys are out, we don't want any more of the cowboy stories, she's kind of stuck. So she's trying to find some inspiration, and she starts looking at celebrities, just trying to get an idea of what she would want her, male character to look like, and nothing's hitting her. So then she's like, well, let me look a little closer to home, because she lives in Nevada. So she looks up like the high rollers in Vegas. So she sees an older guy. I don't think they ever tell us how old he is, but we do know that Katie is 23. And he completely knocks the wind out of her. He's a billionaire, owns hotels and tons of other properties. So she decides, you know what? I'm going to drive to Vegas. I'm going to get dolled up. She puts on her best sexy red dress, and she's going to have a one-night stand. She figures this is going to give her great inspiration to write her new book. So she goes to this nice hotel. I think it's called Vegas Baby. And she sees a group of tall women and wonder where are they going? She also sees a buffet, and being that she's kind of been down on her luck, like the advance she received, that's about gone. She's behind on her rent. So she's not doing too great financially. So a buffet for her right now looks like just magical. So she follows the women. She loads her plate up, which she's the only one who's doing this. Everyone else isn't really eating. And then a woman named Miranda comes on the stage and says, she's the founder of Sugar Daddy Escorts. She freaks out, of course, because now she knows, these girls are escorts. So a guy comes up to her and says to come with me. So she had filled out a card, with her name and all her information. And then we find out that the person that wants her, of course, it's going to be the older man that she saw when she was looking up the high rollers in Vegas. And his name is Darius Morrow. So this book does what I love, which is go from both characters' point of view. I absolutely love that. So Darius had not intended on participating this evening, okay? But when he saw Katie, and she was the complete opposite of everybody else. She's short, blonde, and curvy. So she stuck out to him. That's not his normal type, but she absolutely, grabbed his attention. So he even calls his brother, Raleigh, and is like, I might have just fucked up. And his brother's like, what have you done? And he's like, I just got a woman from the Sugar Daddy's escort. And so his brother was like, good, you need to. And if you don't, I'm going to fly out there and kick your ass, You need to do this. So in walks Katie. She's super nervous, and she calls him sir right off the bat, and he completely loves it. So she starts rambling, and he tells her to stop in this really demanding voice. It rattles her, and she falls and hits her knee on the table. So he goes and gets some Absicora. I might not be saying it right. I don't know. It's a cream, and he keeps it on deck because he's into doing, a little kink, and this helps with any type of bruising that might occur. So he gives her some wine, and he asks her how long she's been doing this, aka being an escort. And she says it's her first night, and that excites him. And so he tells her about the contract and if she's okay with it, and she barely reads it, which bothers him. But her thing was they've already vetted all of the, potential, the clients. They've already vetted them. So he tells her that he's going to pay her $10,000 for one night, which is double the normal rate. She about choked on her wine because, of course, she was not anticipating that number. So she asks for more wine, and he tells her you'll get it under one condition: you'll drink it naked. She tries to take the dress off, and it's stuck. So he has to help her take it off, and he tells her, I like to unwrap my gifts. So then he asks her if she really is an escort, and she says yes, but he knows she's lying. Then he asks her if she's ever been spanked, and she says never. So then he tells her he's going to spank her for lying, and it kind of freaks her out, but him saying that to her turns her on. So now we learn that Katie, she isn't as experienced in the bedroom as one might think, even though she writes erotica. So he spanks her, and of course she likes it. It makes her even wetter. And he says to her that he's going to, show her just how wet she's going to become by spanking her, and he's going to open her legs afterwards. So when he made the comment about bad girls get spanked, she got a little jealous, thinking of him with other, women. And kind of in her brain was kind of like, well, where the hell did that come from? Just met this man. So then he tells her, spread your legs and show daddy how wet you are. That's kind of hot. I'm not even going to lie. That's hot to hear a man say that. It's pretty hot. So Darius is worried that since he said that last sentence, she's going to bolt, because many women do. But she likes that kind of talk, and she didn't even realize she liked it until he started talking to her that way. He tells her to tell him what she wants, and she says, I want daddy to make me come. And so he fingers her until she comes. He then has her get face down, ass up on the bed, and he slams into her, and she has an earth-shattering orgasm. She tells him she didn't know sex could be like that. Then they lay in bed and fall asleep. So they wake up in the morning. She's upset because she was like, you didn't get your money's worth. And he let her know that, he did, and that they still had a little over an hour left on the contract. So he ordered her, order whatever you want on the menu from room service. She had never ordered room service before, so she had a field day with that. He took her in the shower again. They had a nice hard fuck. He tells her a car is going to pick her up, take her home, and he'll have her car delivered back to her apartment. Part of the whole daddy thing is wanting to take care of the woman, right? And so she wanted him to come with her, but he was like he couldn't. He had a lot of work to do. She looked sad, but by lunchtime, old boy was just kind of like, I got to get her back. She goes home, and her landlord was like, do I get to kick you out today? What an ass. And so she slams down $1,000 and told him to keep the change. So she was paid in cash, the 10th grand, obviously. So then she tries to think of a title for the book, and she can't think of anything at first. And then it hits her, she'll call it One Night, which she thought of while she was trying to convince herself it was just one night and to let it go. So she gets to writing, and she gets a call from Sarah, her publisher, and she says the new thing in now is Daddy Doms. So Katie feels like this is fate, and is like, you know what, no problem, I'm on it. So the next day she gets a call and think it's Sarah, and says about the daddy, and makes the comment, about the Daddy Dom thing, but it's Miranda, owner of Sugar Daddy Escorts, and she gives her the new offer, which was for her to accompany Mr. Morrow on a trip to I think it's Peach Orchard, Georgia, for his grandma's 80th birthday party. So he apparently wants her to accompany him as his fake fiance. This is going to be like a 2-week gig, and it's going to pay $200,000. She'll get the first $100,000 up front and the other half afterwards. So she, of course, agrees, and Miranda lets her know that a car is going to be there for her in about an hour. We switch back to Darius. He's pretty much run down to greet her when she comes back in the limo, and she, of course, is happy to see him. And he even tells her he misses her, and he didn't mean to say that. But it happened, and she said it back to him. She missed him as well. So he takes her up to the penthouse, and she's like, I know it's only been a day, but it feels like it's been so long. So she tells him she's hungry, and he said something about, she had made a comment about how she had been surviving on noodles as of lately. And in his mind, he's thinking, oh my God, like, this is how she's been having to survive. Like, I really have to take care of her. So it's like really giving into that whole daddy thing. So they go over the contract. She looks a little sad, of course. He notices it and asks her, why is she looking like that? And she's wondering how many times he's done this with other women. And he realizes she's jealous, and again, he likes that. And he let her know that he doesn't use sugar daddy services. He just knows about the contract because it's ran in his hotel, and he likes to know what's being done in his hotel. So that makes her happy. So then, of course, he starts talking to her about the rules. And basically, it's just, if you do what I say, you'll be rewarded. And if you do things that are wrong, you'll be punished. And it could be a spanking. It could be a spanking with a belt, with my hand. It could be an anal plug. It could be a chastity belt. Basically, what he chooses. And again, she's turned on. And she's shocked that all this stuff excites her. So, of course, the whole time he's telling her, what could happen. He's like, all these different options. He's like rubbing her clit. So I'm like, no wonder she's turned on when you're saying this stuff. So she, of course, is extremely wet. And he, of course, asks her, do you want to come? And she says yes. And he says, come for daddy. So after she comes, she asks him, what can I do for you, daddy? And he says, I want you to ride my cock. And so she rides him, and they both come extremely hard. So then he says he's going to take her to dinner at Opulence, which is a high-end restaurant in the hotel. It's super exclusive. It's like an 8-month waiting list, but of course he owns the place, so he can go whenever he wants. So she was like, I don't really have anything to wear to some place like that. He's like, don't worry about it, I'll have it taken care of. So he tells her to go take a shower, and when she comes back out, there's this beautiful blue gown laying on the bed there for her. And he even had her he had laid out some panties that had a vibrator attached to them and told her she had to wear those. So this makes her nervous, but she's like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and do it. But now she's running late, and because she was supposed to be there at 8, and now it's 8:15. And while she's on the way down there, he starts buzzing the vibrator. And when he sees her, he tells her, daddy doesn't like lateness. And she was like, I'm sorry, So then they go to the restaurant. It's absolutely beautiful. And he, of course, plays with her throughout the dinner, buzzing the vibrator. So, of course, she loves it, It's great, the whole vibrating panty thing. And she also loves the food. And there was wine, there was chocolate cake. She's in heaven. So they go back to the suite. And, of course, they have a nice hardcore session. And they spend the next few days just basically eating and fucking. And I think by now she's on birth control, because he had said before that he was going to have her checked out he has a private doctor. And they were going to put her on birth control because he wanted to be inside her ungloved. I'm like, all right. So he's going to send her on a little shopping spree, get whatever she wants for the trip and then some. He's got to go to work. But while he's at the meeting, the dude's completely distracted because the only thing he can think about is her, like what she's doing, And so she sends him a text with her in a red negligee that barely covers her tits and ass. And he was barely paying attention in the meeting already. And now he's like, whatever proposals you all have, just give it to the consultants. They'll get back to you in 3 days. Someone tried to ask him another question. He's like, nope, we're done for the day. So he texts her back, I want you bent over the couch with that negligee on, ready for daddy. And so, of course, she's ready for him. And he comes in and they pound it out. He's thinking in his mind, like, I really like having this woman around, and this is going to be super hard to let her go. And actually, before this, he had asked her, they were having a conversation about, like, what she did. And she had told him that she was a writer, but she didn't go to, like, any more detail at all. He gave a little background of his story, which is that, he's from Peach Orchard, Georgia, and that he was a football player, and he went off to school. He went to Notre Dame. He got hurt, I think, his senior year, and so his professional aspirations to be in the NFL were gone. And he took an internship in Vegas, and thus that was the beginning of his business career. So he does say there was something that, bad that really happened to his family, but of course, they don't tell us right now, so we're going to have to wait and find out. So Darius has to work, and it's like a couple of days before they're going to leave on the trip, and she decides to order some lunch and to get some writing done. So when she orders her lunch, she goes to open the door to get it, and the woman looks at her with such disdain. And it's like, Miss Davis. And she hands her her order. So then she feels bad because she's like, oh gosh, she probably knows that I'm an escort, and I wonder who else knows. All these thoughts are like going through her head. And she kind of loses her appetite. So she turns on the TV, and after she had like slowly started to eat, breaking news. Darius Morrow is apparently off the market, but he's also a user of Sugar Daddy's escort service. And apparently these escorts have, they call their guys daddy. So now she's completely mortified. And they even splattered her name. They were like, and Katie Davis is his current, person he's dealing with, and she's a romance writer, and it's like, oh my gosh. Now she has a pen name. She doesn't write under Katie Davis. She writes under a different name. So she's decided, you know what? I need to leave. And so she took as much of her stuff as she could. She was about to walk out the door, runs right into Darius. He saw the story, was concerned about her, and was coming to check on her. And he thought she didn't want anything to do with him now that everyone knew about them. But she was like, no, I'm concerned about your reputation. And so he tried to console her, but she had already made up her mind. And so once he fell asleep, she was leaving. And she left a note as well before she left out. And she snuck out, and before she walked out, she heard him in his dreams calling her, because he was like, come here, my kitty cat. But she still left. So then Darius wakes up and he sees Katie's gone. He's calling out throughout the whole penthouse for her. She's gone. So he saw the note. He's pissed. The note basically is just saying that, she doesn't want to cause problems. She's just trying to make this easier for him. And he's like, fuck that. I got to get my baby back. So he calls security, finds out, they saw her leave like probably half an hour ago. And he's like, get me an, inconspicuous type of vehicle. Don't get me the flashy ones I got. And they find out her location, and he's like, send it to my GPS. And he is on his way to go get her, because she's going to go to a motel, because she knows if they know her name, they know where she lives. So she's trying to hide out for a couple days. So he finds her. He pulls in front of her, gets out of the car. She's shocked, drops her bags. He, of course, is like, what are you doing? And she's like, I was just trying to make it better for you. So they do this whole back and forth. And basically he was like, you're going to get punished for this. And she gets in the car, goes back to the hotel. He tells her to strip when they get to the room and wait for him on the edge of the bed. She does. And then he paddles her with his hand. She's already wet before he even started spanking her. But of course, after he's done spanking her, she's super wet. And he's telling her, as he's spanking her, he's asking her questions. Are you going to leave again? What should you have done? And she's like, I'm not going to leave again. I should have talked to you. I'm not going to run again. And then, of course, once he's done spanking her, she's super wet. And he rubs her clit, makes her come, slams into her. She comes again. So they wind up leaving a couple days earlier due to the attention that the story from the news is getting. So they head to Peach Orchard, Georgia. And on the way there, he went to sleep. She was constantly thinking about, are they going to believe this is a real engagement? Are they going to like me? Like, all these thoughts are floating through her head. So when he finally wakes up, he was kind of like, I thought you would have been asleep after the night we had last night, And she told him, basically the thoughts that have been going on in her head. So then he reaches in his pocket and he gives her a ring. It's a princess cut, beautiful ring. And it's something she would have picked out for herself. So she's like super happy to see it. And she starts thinking like, could this be real? And the look on his face looks like this genuine happiness that she's wearing this ring. And he seems super proud. And then he killed it, because he says, we got to make it look real if we're going to fool my ex. Damn. So they do a little game of like getting to know each other. kind of asking, quick, little basic questions. And then on the way to the house, he was trying to like kiss her, and she kind of pulled away because she said she was tired, but really what was in her head is she was mad because she's thinking, okay, he only gave it to me because he's trying to convince his ex. She and her feelings. We get it. So then they arrive to the house, and his brother Rowley is there. And right off the bat, Katie doesn't like him. And then his ex appears. So right off the bat, we find out that Rowley is now with Tiffany, which is Darius's ex. That's a problem. That's weird. That's weird. That's your whole brother. Okay. So they apparently have an open relationship. And Rowley even tries to tell Darius, maybe you all could have, made it work if you didn't try it. You should have been more open-minded about the relationship. He's pissed, and I would be too. Like, even if I didn't want the person, motherfucker, do not try and, like, school me on what I should have did with the bitch you're now fucking. That's just a problem. So I'm like, the balls on this dude. Like, oh my gosh. So Katie's in the kitchen. She's with Gran. And Gran had told her to call her that. So that's what she's going to call her from now on. They're having a nice time. And Darius then takes her on the tour of the grounds. So this isn't where he grew up. They grew up, kind of poor. And this is actually the house that his grandmother used to work for. She used to clean it. And it was for this really mean old man. So when he got his money up, that's when he bought this house for his gran. He made the guy an offer. The guy couldn't refuse it. And so she has now a wonderful home. So he gives her a tour of the place. They wind up going out back in the barn. And, of course, hard fuck. They come back in. Darius has this big smile on his face. And Gran is like, I haven't seen you smile that way in a long time, So, clearly, he's been super stoic for a long time. So, he's plotting on a way to get into Katie's bed tonight because Gran has a rule. If you're not married, you don't share a room. But their rooms are adjacent, so he's going to try and find a way to get in there tonight. So, they have dinner, and while they're having dinner, Tiffany asks Katie what she does. Katie tells her she's a writer. So, Tiffany wants to know what kind of writer. I've never known someone who was a writer. So, Katie says she's going to go upstairs. She was trying to kind of evade the question. And Tiffany was, she wasn't going to let go. So Tiffany was like, I'm just so curious, what type of writer are you? If you have a publisher, then you must be really good. So she just told her that she was a romance writer and that's what she went to college, I think, for creative writing. And when she got out of college, she had a bestseller. And she writes under a pen name because she likes the being anonymous, basically. So then Darius asked her, what her first series was about. And she was like, cowboys. And he goes, oh, so that's why you like the barn so much. So, of course, he gives her a wink. Katie goes upstairs. Gran has Riley and Tiffany do the dishes, clean up after dinner. And then when she's upstairs, she writes a lot. And she's deep into her writing. She doesn't even hear Darius come in. He locks the door. And then he tells her he wants to watch her pleasure herself. And at first she's like, I can't. And of course she's going to cave. And she starts doing it. And she gets wetter and wetter. And then he's like, my turn. So then he starts eating her pussy. She, of course, comes. And then they have a hard fuck session. So they actually make love. Well, actually it wasn't a hard fuck session. They actually made love this time. And she is just like tears in her eyes, and he starts kissing her tears as they fall. It was such a beautiful moment to read. So this, of course, leaves her thinking, like, where do we go from here? So the next morning they go down and have breakfast, and it was like oatmeal, and Tiffany's like, too many carbs. And Riley said no too. So then Katie made the comment, oh, well, carbs are great, And so Tiffany was like, yeah, I can tell and then she looked at her waist. And so then Katie was just like, my mom always told me sweets are for sweet people. And maybe that's why I'm so sweet. And so she looked at Darius and he was like, that's right, honey. And then Tiffany was about to say something else to Katie. And Darius was like, don't you dare start. Pretty much like, I know enough stuff about you that, her boobs are fake. She had a tummy tuck. nose job. Like, she tries to portray like she's, she's worked on this physique and she paid for it. So he's like, just don't even. I know enough of your secrets. So then Tiffany made a comment, and she did like an air quotes about how um she was like, what are you going to do? Punish me? And so this pissed off Katie, because now she feels like, oh, you used to do this with her. And she's pissed. Darius can tell. He's like, we need to talk. So he takes her outside and they get it all out. And he says, he had done the spanking thing once with her. And she told him, like, he basically tried to do it with her. And she basically told him that he was a pervert and he dumped her. So then he tells her about his childhood. And I guess when he was 8 and Riley was 6, that's when their parents had died in a car accident. And so they came and lived with their gran, and she raised them like her own. And then, of course, the whole part about him working hard to get out of there, and then how, he got hurt playing, football and everything. So Tiffany, they go upstairs, and they change. They're going to come down for the party. Awesome party. Had a wonderful time. But midway through it, Tiffany comes up with her phone, and she's like, oh, so you had to pay for a date. Is that what you have to use your money for? And so Katie's mortified, and she says, yeah, it looks like your publisher tried to bury it, but here's the story. And then she tells Katie, once I find out what your pen name is, I'm going to ruin you. I have lots of followers on social media. And Darius told her that he wasn't going to take this from her, and told Riley, get her out of here. So finally Riley's able to get her out. And he had also made the statement that, yes, it started off that way, but we fell in love and we're together now. And she storms off, little Miss Tiffany with Riley. So then Katie looks at him and she's like, is that for real? Like you really love me? And at first he didn't say anything, and she thought, shit, like he doesn't feel it. And then he was like, yes, I love you. And she says it back to him. Total sweet moment. So then they get back to the party. Everybody pretty much, they act like they forgot what they heard. They had a great night. So the next day it's time to go. And before they leave, she talks to Gran, and she lets her know, I know the engagement's not real. She said, but all relationships have to start somewhere. She gives her a great big hug and tells her, I think the next time I see you, you'll have the right ring on, so you'll be able to share a room together. So they leave. Katie feels like she's missing something, and she has him pull over to check for her laptop, which she has, but it's in a different spot than where she leaves it. But she was just like, all right, I was tired last night. There's no telling what happened, So we already know it's going to be a problem with that. So they get back to Vegas, and when they get out, she's just kind of like on the sidewalk, like, where do I go? And he's like, you're coming with me. You're coming home with me. And she's like, oh, not to my apartment? He's like, no, you're coming home with me. You're coming home with Daddy. And she was like, oh, okay. So then they go back to the penthouse, and they're about to mess around in the car, but then they realize it might have been paparazzi outside, and then he's going to have this big heart on. So she's like, we'll just finish this upstairs. But in the back of her mind, she's like thinking about, I need to tell him about the story that I'm writing. She did tell him, though, before that he was the inspiration for it. But I guess she's kind of worried about if he finds out, it could cause more problems. So she's a little worried. But that doesn't stop them from having like a heart fuck session when they get back to the penthouse. So they go for dinner. He's planning to propose to her for real. He has people come in, get all dressed up. They go to a restaurant. But when they walk out of the hotel, they're met with like tons of paparazzi. And he thought everything would have calmed down by now, but it hasn't. So they get to the restaurant. They have a great dinner, but he's still feeling uneasy. But he was still going to go ahead and propose. So, boom, bunch of reporters bust through the door, and they rush towards Katie. He's like trying to knock people out and everything, and his security's trying to get at people, and he hit a couple of them. So the security yanked them out of there. They get back to the room. They get to their phones. She's looking at her emails. He's looking at messages from his publicist saying she used you. And apparently there were things about him. She had put about the parents dying and the career stuff with football in there. And I guess for him that was personal stuff. And so he's completely hurt. And he was like, you wrote about me? And she was like, I told you I wrote about you. You know, I told you you're the inspiration for the book. But he's livid because he's like, you use personal stuff, you know. But it doesn't make sense to her because she had just submitted it yesterday to her publisher. So it's like the publisher just got it. So how does anybody else have it? But he was just pissed, and he told her, I'll pay you what I owe. He like gave her the cash he had on him. He threw it at her, and he said, whatever else I owe you, I'll have Miranda wire it to you. And he was like, and basically get a ride home. Like, he was livid. She, of course, you know, he was so cold. It just hurt her so bad. She runs out of there. All she took was her purse and her backpack, which had her laptop in it. She didn't cry in front of him, but when she got to the elevator, she burst into tears. Miranda was actually in the lobby and took her and helped her get away. They found a food truck that they were able to like take her home in. But when she got back to her apartment, there's paparazzi everywhere. So her landlord's like trying to fend them off. So then she winds up sneaking in, acting like a delivery person. And she gets inside, locks her doors, closes the blinds. And then finally later that night, she just cried and cried and cried. So she returned the messages to Sarah, the publisher. And basically this is when she finds out about the new information in the chapters. And she sees the article, and Sarah's like, that's what you sent to me. So she finally thinks back and realizes she doesn't use a password to protect her computer because she's afraid she's going to lock herself out so anyone could access her shit. And so the ding, you know, Tiffany ass did this. So Tiffany was able to get in there, download it, write the bullshit, send it off to the press. Because when she had checked her laptop bag, that's why it wasn't where she left it, because Tiffany's the one that put it back in there. So Sarah's like, you know, she'll do what she can. And she was just like, you know, try and figure, I don't know how we're going to fix this. We'll figure something out, you know. But she's like, oh my gosh, like, he thought I betrayed him. But at the same time, she's hurt because it's like, but he threw me away like so easily. So our boy Darius is miserable. He has the cleaning staff like clean that apartment. He's trying to get the smell of Katie out of there. But she's everywhere. And so after a couple of days, he was like, fuck it. He even thought about moving. It was like the memories were just too much for him. And so he was like, I'm going to get out of town. So she had mailed him the stuff that he had bought her. And I want to say maybe even the rest of some of that money that he gave her too. Like, she sent it all back. Like, but he was looking for an apology from her, but there was nothing with the stuff, you know. So he's going to go see Gran, get away, clear his head. So he even takes a different private jet than the one he took there with her. I'm like, damn. So he gets back to Peach Orchard, and Gran is just kind of like, she's talking to him, and she realizes that, you know, Raleigh and Tiffany had come to her like the day the story broke, and they knew the story so well. Like, how do you know it and it just broke, you know? And so she starts talking to him, and they're talking it out, and that's when it starts to kind of make sense that basically something happened, because this doesn't sound like Katie. It doesn't sound like she would do this to you. Like, that woman loves you. Like, this doesn't make sense. And Gran had even said to him, like, you know, I mean, to be honest, the stuff she said isn't something that somebody, I mean, that stuff people could look up anyway. It's not like that information isn't out there. If you dig a little bit, you can find it. So, like, it's not like she did, anything so horrible, she did tell you that you were the inspiration for the book, So he realizes I've been a little stupid, and he calls her because she had texted him. She left him a message, and he didn't text her at first, but then he finally calls her, and he tells her, just how sorry he is, and that, they do this whole back and forth about what happened, and he told her, look up your timestamps, see when the changes were made, like when, because every time you save it, there's a timestamp for that. You send something, there's a timestamp. He's like, look up all that information, send it to me, and he's like, and I'll take care of it. So he's going to make a public statement, which he's having someone from Vegas fly out from their local news to Peach, Georgia, while he's standing by his private jet. So Miranda comes to Katie's apartment with the glam team, and she doesn't know, why they're there. She asks Miranda, like, what's going on? Miranda turns the TV on, and it's Darius, and it shows that he's out in Georgia on the tarmac, and he gives his heartfelt speech. He tells everything that happened, and then he gets on his knees. He has the ring that he gave her and says, this needs to go back on your finger. Will you marry me? And then Miranda calls the reporter's phone. She gives the answer. At first, she's just like shaking her head, and Miranda's like, they can't see you, sweetie. So she has to say, yes, yes, yes. So then she's going to get dolled up to go meet him at Opulence that night. So she has on her favorite color, her light pink dress. She looks amazing. They have a great dinner. And then, of course, they have a great night. We find out they get married in Georgia. And we find out that Tiffany apparently changed her name, moved up north. She didn't press charges against her because she was like, she's going to have a piss poor life anyway. And then we find out she's pregnant, and she apparently during all the wedding planning, she missed a couple days. And so baby's on the way. She had planned on telling him that night, but she wound up telling him earlier. And he was absolutely ecstatic, and she told him he was going to make a great father, and he told her she was going to be a great mother, and that is how it ends. It was just a super sweet story. I mean, my thing with the Tiffany girl is you go through that type of trying to tear somebody down because he dumped you. Like, if you're not into, like, what he's into, then you all are not going to work, He likes to be called daddy. There is nothing wrong with that. And if you feel uncomfortable, he did the right thing. He let you go. He didn't try and force you into saying, being what he wanted. He let you go. But I think it's the idea for her, she got dumped by a billionaire. I think for her ego, she couldn't take it. So therefore, somebody's got to pay for that. But let me know what you guys think of this cute little read. Drop down in the comment section. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook journal, I do have some of those on sale. The link will be listed below in the description section. I truly thank you all for your support. Make sure you like and subscribe. And thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.